Hi, Mama.
Hello. Good to see you, love.
You too.
All right, so today, generational differences. Do they matter? On the one hand, generational differences offer us insight to values, preferences, and motivations of each generation. On the other hand, if we lean too heavily on these categories, we might miss the nuance of individual connection. So, in the workplace or in our community, we're going to dig into what to know and how to build relational capacity so we're moving forward together.
Yeah, and with that, welcome to the Mother Daughter Download, where we unite sociological imagination with workplace dynamics, which helps us expand upon how we lead, grow, and connect with each other. We're Lisa and Alex, a mother daughter duo. We're different generations, which is why today is perfect. And we're on opposite coasts. We have a shared passion to help each other and challenge each other to grow and other people as well. So we're excited to be here. And in each episode, we explore a topic that kind of shapes how we work, lead, connect with each other. So blending a sociological lens and leadership experience, we help individuals and organizations achieve their growth goals through expanded understanding and capacity. So we believe when people thrive, impact and results follow. So let's dig into today's episode.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation, Alex. And like you said, we can model the different generations. But I wanted to start with, again, particularly thinking about my, let's say, lengthy career in corporate and again, as an HR professional. And I think about starting way back in the early 90s and some of the things that really kind of like shaped my belief system about how I would show up. And, I was responding to the norms and practices around me. And the things that I thought about was the way to work. You put in the extra hours, you dress a certain way, you certainly don't wear jeans. You leave your personal life outside of the office and you're just always pushing, improving yourself through, again, productivity and doing more. So I did that, but then also experienced quite a shift as my career grew. And again, I moved into, different decades and chapters of my career and saw like, wow, there are different needs, different things that are of a priority and importance. And of course, I'd be questioning, why do people need so much feedback? Why do they want to dress so casually? Why does everything have to be a conversation? Where, again, my style and preference was certainly shaped, but then I had to open up and expand that view. And just, a couple of things certainly that I saw was different is adjusting, of course, my pace and how I worked, and also shifting on the way of how I collaborated with others within the organization. But I'll pause there just in terms of just sharing my own start within my career, but also opening up to, again, knowing that there had to be adjustments for connection. And again, to move forward the work and the goals that were important to the organization.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up adjustments because that really is the thing and the goal and also what holds people back, I think. I think everybody of every generation gets frustrated with the ones above them or below them and thinks that their way is the right way. And we have to understand, especially in a work setting, there really isn't a right way. There might be like an optimal
Right.
way or a more efficient way, but just because you are efficient with your way doesn't mean that there might not be a better way. And I think that's hard because then there's a learning curve, right? You have to learn about this new
Mhm.
way that is more efficient. So in the meantime, it kind of feels like it's not. But once you're
Yeah.
there, like we really do need to be open-minded about approaching things in different ways. You have your own personal life, but at work, we really do need to be flexible in that sense. Otherwise, we're going to be stagnant when it comes to progress.
Right.
We just work with a
Yeah.
nonprofit group, and it's like if we're not communicating well in the background, like we're not able to optimize the impact and the results that we are trying to create. So I
Yeah.
think it's really important to stay open-minded about that. And just a quick disclaimer also with the generation thing is it is a bunch of stereotypes. It's a bunch of
Yeah.
generalizations, about, quite literally is generalizations about how people who were born in certain decades or in certain periods experience the world. And is there truth in that, right? Is there research behind that, oh, people who grew up here tend to be like this? Yes, but that doesn't mean that everybody fits into every stereotype about their generations. And of
Yeah.
course, there's also the micro generations, whether you want to talk about between, Gen X and millennials being Xennials, or if you want to talk about
Hmm.
people between millennials and Gen Z being Zillennials. There's all these micro, little generations. So please just keep an open mind. We are basing this off of kind of like generational generalizations, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they can still give us some insight. And I think a big point is if we take the time to think about the context of which someone grew up,
Yeah.
and how what was going on in the world politically, economically,
Hmm.
there war, is there recession, all of these things are going to impact the way that people think about things, go about things, right? And this is just in sociology, basic socialization. So the whole thing
Yep.
that's helpful about generations is we are classifying people by kind of similar socialization experiences in a very broad macro sense. But of course, everybody's unique in the way that they, grew up and experienced things, and we all are going to have unique approaches. So just
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree, and I think that we need to lean into curiosity. So again, I think about 20 years within corporate and what I've seen. Yeah, generational difference is real, and it shows up. But again, I like to make sure that our lens stays on the unique individual. We
Yeah.
will indeed see that there are differences in how people communicate and how people want to leverage technology. And like someone might prefer text. And again, the Slack messenger and others are like, well, what about the phone? And it's okay as long as, again, the point is that we're actually communicating. And then again, how are we adjusting to try to meet folks where they are versus, again, going with the broad brush statement? And I
Yeah.
also just want to introduce too, and I know you'll talk about this, Alex, is that, people have different values and you might connect it to generations or not, but there, these are some categories in terms of people really wanting to and care within the workplace about what is the mission and the purpose of the organization. Some really value, again, flexibility. So some now, of course, are valuing wellness and well-being, or is it title or compensation? And there's no right or wrong between those, but from an employer perspective, is being curious and checking in with what does matter to people so that, again, we can kind of make those adjustments to, again, creating a culture in a workplace where people can thrive
Yeah.
and have what they need to, feel trusted. And again, that sense of belonging, which I think everyone's looking for, regardless of generation.
Yeah, and I feel like you kind of just went in a circle and almost answered some of your own questions earlier, and just kind of that thought process of, well, why are we doing this? Why do they want to wear jeans? Why? And I think you just kind of answered yourself in terms of instead of thinking like, oh, why they're so annoying, why do they want that? No, literally ask why. Like if you're like, why do they want to do that? Maybe that's an opportunity to figure out the answer to that why. Like you said, we need to lead with curiosity and not just this frustration. Because
Yeah.
it is each generation's gonna ask why do they do it this way, why do they want to do it this way, and like you said, people are unique, that's why.
Hmm.
And I think that if
Hmm.
we continue, with younger and younger generations, we have destigmatized a lot of things, like talking about mental health, talking about burnout, talking about, you know what I mean, needing more, whatever, mental health days, whatever it is. And that's the why. People are unique, and we're embracing that more. And when we can embrace people's uniqueness and different approaches, when we are leading with curiosity, when we are being open-minded and allowing for, those kind of like little adjustments, like we said,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
that's how we get the best work. That's how we get initiative. That's how we get, whatever new ways of doing things that might be better. Are they always going to be better? No, but is it worth a try? Absolutely. So I
Yeah.
agree with you. Let's ask those whys, and let's ask them seriously,
Yeah.
and lead with curiosity and allow for incorporating new approaches, even if
Right.
that's scary.
And I think this ends up being quite a challenge for leadership within an organization because, and again, I know you'll bring the sociological lens in this, is like what ends up getting created within an organization or in terms of culture is really informed by the people at the top.
Right.
So their age, their preference, their style. And if they end up being too rigid, it can really impact things that they're aiming to drive, which is engagement, retention. Again, we want innovation, ideas, and creativity to ultimately serve, again, the product and service of the organization. But if we're too rigid and people don't feel, let's say, a sense of agency or an opportunity to, again, authentically bring themselves in, and that's just by sharing those those differences. So I think that that's a critical part, and I like to put pressure on leaders to please lean into the openness and again, go back to the curiosity of just what is driving people. And I have two examples I just want to share with you real quick. Going back to, again, me early on in my career, I remember, and this is really interesting, I want you to challenge it. I remember, again, early 20s, actually asking my boss, asking permission if I could go out and run during my lunch break. I was training for the Boston Marathon at the time. I'm like, can I go out and do my training runs at my lunch hour? And he said no. And so just interesting. And then again, then shift it to, again, me in corporate, let's say 2 decades later, I'm working with, again, I'm going to say my millennials, who I get lots of them who had worked for me, love them, and learning again their preferences. Of course, they wouldn't ask about how they're spending their lunch hour, and also I admired how much their end of day mattered. It ended and they left. So again, this protection of their private time, their personal time, they're moving on. And one other thing I remember, a millennial shared well with me, and it really informed our reward and recognition programs, was, hey, we really care about experiences. So kind of weaving that into, yep, things change, and it's okay. And how are we meeting people where they are and being open to it?
It's nice to hear you talk about it that way in terms of, okay, I didn't get this grace, but then when I was kind of in that position of power, I gave it. And I think that when you are in leadership, you need to be really, I'm assuming, intentional about that. Am I going to be rigid? Am I going to do things because I've been here for 40 years and I know how they should be done and this is how it's done? Or am I going to be open-minded to things improving, even though I didn't get that?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes back to a lot, where it's, I didn't get that, and back in my day,
Right.
and,
Right.
and it's like,
Right.
yeah, but could we make it better for these people so they don't have to suffer
Yes.
like you did?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, and I want to absolutely be out there on the learning path as well, because I absolutely had my own rigid view
Yeah.
in terms of the way it should be done. And I can look back now and recognize that. You've heard, again, too many stories about me and my view of like how you should dress in the workplace.
No thong shoes.
But the reality is, it's like, what does that really matter? And then it's interesting, Alex, I want to kind of hear your thoughts on this too, just this whole sense of adaptability. Look at how much we adapted again within the workplace. I'm just thinking about COVID, and we adapted significantly. And I just think that's interesting about how much we had to embrace generational differences, and again, how we work and how we show up and how we connect. And that just kind
Yeah.
of maybe connects to, again, those historical implications that really shape
Yeah. With
work.
with keeping in mind, of course, it was a pandemic and terrible.
Hmm.
It was good for the workplace in terms of pushing, because yeah, you have to adjust. You have to let people work from home. You have to let people, you know what I mean, people be more autonomous and responsible over their time and how they're using it. No, they're not going to sit in the office for 8 hours. And even when they were, they probably didn't need to. I know so many people who are like, I got all my work done in 4 or 5 hours, and now I'm just here because I have to be. So I think COVID pushing us to have to adjust and be more flexible with schedules was really, really positive. And I think it's put us on a good place to continue to think about future adjustments. We're already making them, we've established them. So I think it put us in the practice of being a little bit more open-minded about what other adjustments might we implement that could be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad that it at least kicked us off there with that, for sure.
Yeah. I'm curious, as your study of differences, I guess, what are data points or things that you find in the research that you think matters, or things that we should be, I guess, aware of?
I mean, in terms of generations, I would just say like, I mean, a million things. I guess first, and I come back to this a lot when I think about the workplace and hiring, is in-group bias, right? And we
Mhm.
tend to hire people who are similar to us in one way or another, if we perceive it that way. And of course, hiring kind of trickles down from the top, right? So the CEO might hire a HR person who's similar to him, who then might hire people who are similar to her, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that going back to really critical thinking and being open-minded at the leadership level. Do I want to keep hiring people who are like me? Off the bat, you think, yeah, because they're going to get it done how I do it. They're going to do it how I
Mhm.
like. And I think about this, even how I got hired at some of my schools. They're like, oh, you went to Howard. I went to Howard. I know that you were taught how I was taught, and you're going to
Yeah.
teach from the perspective that I teach from, right? And you kind of already have that automatic in because you have this common association, whether that's race, gender, whatever, right? Any sort of identity there. Whether it's a sports team that you like the Celtics, me
Mhm.
too. Like someone get hired off of that. It's silly. But so being really aware of being intentional about hiring people who aren't like you,
Yeah.
getting people to
Yeah.
come in who aren't like you, and not as just a few model minority, like, or filling the quota, just a few people here who, like, no, really diversifying the workplace and being intentional about that, because that's how you get those new, unique, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
approaches. So
Yeah.
just being
And I've seen an,
intentional about that, but I think
oh,
that could be hard to do because it is a natural bias that we have.
yeah. Yeah.
And then I
And
also think, go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just going to just add to
Yeah.
that. I think that there are a lot of really solid HR professionals and leaders out there who are working really hard to put models in place to try to minimize that bias. So in
Yes.
terms of, creating a diverse panel of who's going to interview, ensuring that the same interview questions are being asked of all the candidates.
Yeah.
I think that there's a number of methods to try to, again, ensure that we can try to minimize the bias. But Alex,
Yeah.
again, you could go on and on, I know, about
Yeah.
innately, those biases exist.
Yeah.
But how do we just kind of increase the awareness to actually pause and reflect and maybe notice so that we,
Yes. Totally.
yeah,
Yeah. And then I would also say, similarly, like we live in a gerontocracy, which means that most of our society's power and wealth is held by members oldest the members of our society the oldest members of our society. I'm trying to say most of the people who, if you look at our politicians, if you look at the people who are wealthy, if you look at CEOs, tends to be older people, right? And
mm,
that's fair because you usually have to work your way up, right? It's that experience that gets you up there. You have to earn those things over time. But yeah, I think again, just being intentional about incorporating younger perspectives, even if that's not like the priority, but incorporating that and not just automatically thinking, oh, these people have no experience, they don't know anything. It might be the other way around where it's like they're not jaded yet. So
mhm.
what perspective might they bring? So I think when you have new people coming in, whether they're new or whether they're young, people tend to be excited, right? They want to come in and make a change, but we're often told as young people to sit down and listen and know your place. So I think it would be cool, everywhere we just kind of encouraged or included younger people in the conversation. Hey, do you want to sit in on one of the meetings? Do you want to what are your
Yeah.
thoughts? I don't know. So I think just trying to incorporate younger people and at least just going back to us saying, be curious and listen, and maybe they could bring in some new ideas.
My approach and kind of like what I wanted within my department was this level of energy, meaning I wanted people to feel welcomed and brought in. But it doesn't mean that everyone has to operate, let's say, high energy, bubbly, enthusiastic, right?
Be
Because you
exhausting for some people. Yeah.
right? And you
Yeah.
clearly need calm and methodical and deliberate to get the work done. So just as you were sharing that, I'm thinking about I've had my own lived experience of, saying, oh, let me have everyone like high energy. And that really is not necessary, nor again, did it allow for, the different core competencies that are required to have a well-functioning department. So we
Yeah.
we learn through these things.
I feel that too, because I'll look at, and even this conversation is making me reflect. Like, I'll look at my students sometimes who each year are farther and farther from me and my experiences, right? And I can see it. And sometimes I'm like, why are they doing it like that? Or why aren't they taking notes? Why are you taking notes? And it's because they don't really need to anymore, right? All of my slides have been posted online since the first day. They can just go open them and read them. When I
Yeah.
was in college, the slides weren't posted. We had to take the notes, or you didn't have access to that information. So it's like
Mhm.
they're not taking notes because they don't. It's that's not necessary anymore. And maybe not having to take the notes and being able to just focus is better for them.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
like when you see people doing, and I find myself doing it in class. Like, well, back in my day, and I'm 29. But
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I need to stop and think again, I'm quickly assuming, oh, they're lazy, oh, they're this, but might it be that they have a better method that just isn't how I do things?
Yeah, so I think that it's been fascinating for me to learn in terms of how we adjust and pulling things together because we think about it differently. And there's not a right or wrong. There's a how do we meet in the middle and bring the best of
Right.
different generations, different perspectives.
On outlines, on slides, on how are we, what's the format, how long, what do we do? Yeah, exactly. And it can be, we've talked about like different type A, type B things too. And you know me, I'm very last minute. And you were so patient with me, so I appreciate that. And I think it's a good model of how you should, you have to work with people with different approaches, right? Even me being in a couple group projects for my classes right now.
Yeah,
You can't go in expecting people are going to work like you. You just can't.
yeah, yeah,
Even if you do think your way is the best way. So,
yeah,
and that kind of goes into like one of my thing reminders, which is you're 100% responsible for your portion of the relationship, right? Whether
hmm,
that's in a conversation with somebody in a group project, you're responsible for your part and for communicating and making sure that your communication is effective, right? And responsibility over our own behavior and communication style and making sure that we're being reflective of our own
yeah.
methods and
Hmm.
nuances and little things and not just hyper focusing on other people's, right? Because people might think the same thing about you.
One other, like again, I don't know if this is generational of a difference or just like a work style, but I just want to share, and I think it was an incredibly important aha moment for me in my career. And again, building relationships is, and you know this about me, I work with a sense of urgency, and I believe, and again, I rate efficiency as whatever an important standard to me, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not the end all be all, and not I learned certainly quickly not everyone works that way, and nor does the best work come out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I have a particular HR partner that I have in mind to help me really learn that well.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a valuable partner because she was very deliberate and methodical in her approach. But I have learned that, you know what, efficiency and this sense of urgency is not always the best approach. But anyway, that's been an important adjustment for
Yeah.
me.
I think that
And
could be definitely generational in general about
yeah,
when we over prioritize efficiency and like competency, because then we don't leave wiggle room. And I feel like where we
yeah,
get ingenuity is that wiggle room or something just kind of spur of the moment or just happening. Like I think we need to allow for, I mean, that's interesting, even you and I with this podcast, right? In our differences, where, we're trying to balance having, a good outline and what are we to hit. But I'm still like, but let's keep it loose so that if, we think of something like that can fit in and that might work,
yeah.
right? So I think whether that's working with people of older generations or younger generations, allowing room for some wiggle room, for some flexibility, because you don't know what could pop up there,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
And I think exactly what you're talking about there, like leaving some space for the possibility
Yeah.
versus the judgment is huge. I'm thinking about, another key part of whatever my own openness to like, hey, there's a different way to approach this is the idea of like collaboration. People love collaboration, right? They want to be heard, they want to be part of the decision, they want to be part of what's coming next, and they want to engage and have impact and influence and contribute. And sometimes I was like, wow, like does everyone need to come together and have all these discussions because the style or let's say preference was like, just go and get it done. But clearly so much more is going to come out in a collaborative way. I'm curious for yourself, and I love this one story about just talking about differences. You have a particular advisor, I think, or maybe it's a boss,
Yeah.
and just talking about there's a generational difference there, but
Yeah.
how you carefully looked at your own assumption of does she
Yes.
want to talk and connect or not?
Yeah. So I think that's a, generational difference and then also, other identities in terms of intersectionality. But I think that's why talking or starting with generations is so good because it's something that we can all kind of relate to and it's not super controversial. And it's like if you take a step back, the advice that we give here or how we approach these differences, you can apply that to other differences as well, right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing. But so yeah, I do. I have a boss who I adore, and I've been working for her for like 6 years now. And I am just naturally kind of a high energy, bubbly, talkative person, right? And I think I got that from you. And so at first, I'd go in, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? What's going on? How's classes going? And she's very straight faced. She's like, good. How are you? And like and at first I was like, oh, she doesn't like like just very kind of like I don't want to say like flat affect, but just very serious. Like she's trying to get her work done and she's trying to, she's being polite, but
Yeah.
just not a talkative person. And I'm very like smiley and probably, whatever. That's probably something I internalized about gender
Mm.
expectations as well, right? I'm supposed to be, I'm a girl, so I gotta smile and be happy, right? That's what people expect of me. And she kind of is like, I don't have time for that. That might not be a priority for her. She's
Mm.
already, big boss. Like, why does she have to appease people with, I'm to smile and be super bubbly all the time? She has things to do. And so over time, she ended up writing me really lovely recommendation letters and
Mm-hmm.
openly, enthusiastically offered, if you ever need a letter of recommendation, I got your back.
Yeah.
I've ran for, Faculty of the Year award. She wrote me something gorgeous there. And so kind of looking at all these things, I was like, wow, like she pays attention. She is paying attention and she does want me here and she does value me and she does see, all of these things that are my strengths, right?
Yeah.
And is helpful with my weaknesses. But
Yeah.
so I just yeah, it was an important learning experience for me. I continued to go in and say hi and be friendly and be
Mhm.
myself. And
Mm.
it's okay if someone doesn't return the same energy, but don't be quick and make an assumption that, oh my
Yeah.
God, they must not like me because they don't communicate the way that I communicate or the way that I like to or prefer to communicate, right?
So when I think about, what might be some takeaways just from the conversation here is yes, leverage the generational difference for understanding, but don't let the categories do the thinking and the relationship building for you.
Yeah.
And, for example, we've heard a lot about like work ethic, and you were mentioning that earlier. Oh, well, Gen X's work ethic, is not as greater or not as great as Gen Z. And the whole thing is no, they're just expressed differently. And that's okay. So if, one, and I think this is true of Gen X, myself, like, oh, it's all about the hours and in FaceTime within the office. And it's like,
Right.
well, someone else is viewing it as like, no, it's quality and speed of the output of the work.
Yeah.
So I think we have to kind of like, neither is, there's not a right or wrong here. There's
Yeah.
just a different approach, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
being open to that. Secondly, I would say, and we've been talking about this, it's like lead with curiosity and not judgment.
Yeah.
Is, ask your colleagues and your coworkers and even your boss, how they best want to communicate, ask your direct reports. What are they
Yeah.
looking for in terms of feedback and how that lands for them? That's
Yeah.
another key thing about building relational capacity in the workplace is seek feedback, right? Be curious about how you're showing up. This fits with your model that you were just saying. You under 100% own 50% of the relationship. Well, the only way that you're going to know is if you ask. If you're going to
Yeah, and I think that
ask.
comes from how do you like to give feedback? How do you like to receive feedback, right?
Yeah.
And if we clarify that from the beginning, I think everybody walks away with a lot more.
Yeah. And then same thing, Alex, here's just another example, because I did a lot of reward and recognition within the organizations, and that matters. And it's funny, here's differences as well, where it's like, oh, we have a recognition. Someone else is like, oh, I want a public shout out. That might mean something to them, might be a gift. And someone else would be mortified, right?
Yeah.
Because
Like
people are
saying happy
different.
birthday at a restaurant.
Right. Like, just know that, again, even best intentions might not have the necessary impact
Yeah, yeah.
that you were intended. So, but again, going back to that curiosity, you might be really surprised by what you learn. And again, you might find again, let's say someone in my generation who might be really more tech savvy than you ever realized, and vice versa. And someone else you might find, again, someone Gen Z or not, who was like, no, I'm really quite controlled about my social media intake, and this is why. So kind of just really staying focused on the individual versus the category. And the third one I'll mention is just commit to, again, building this sense of capacity and relationships, because it doesn't build itself. And this is the work that you were talking about as well. And it's like, again, I just want to reinforce, look for that feedback, get curious about how people work, the tools that they like to work with. Why is that? And
If you
then
know your values, then you know how to motivate them from a leadership
so
perspective.
true. So
Yeah.
true. And again, that's all comes out of this curiosity and asking questions, and then show appreciation and be genuine about it because it's free. And that's always been like a big push is we can say thank you, show gratitude and appreciation. It energizes and fills every generation's cup.
Yeah. You
So
never know how much even a simple compliment can change someone's
yeah,
day. So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, if you have the ability to go and give that positive feedback, do it, right?
yeah.
Even if
I
something simple
agree.
and small, it means a lot. But yeah, my
Definitely, for
takeaways are
sure.
largely, reiterating yours again. When it comes to communication, you can only really control yourself. So I would say your responsibility is being reflective over your communication style and techniques,
Mm,
right? Don't hyper focus on theirs, but focus on how you're communicating and what improvements you could make, how
yeah,
you might be able to make adjustments that would make you more, relevant and understandable to different generations. And that includes learning and asking questions. That includes taking a little bit of time to be like, why might they be like this? Whether that's something you do a quick Google search on, or whether you ask somebody in person,
mm,
right? What is it that happened or in your experience that made you value this? And so whatever, just being able to be curious about other people and also be curious and reflective on your own areas that could use improvement.
yeah,
And again, just reflecting on what is the goal of the conversation that you're going into, and have you clarified that? I think sometimes we go into conversations but we're not clear about what we're looking for.
mhm,
Again, have you put effort into understanding that person? We're quick to think, oh, well, they don't understand me. Are you trying to understand them?
yeah,
Are you using that open-minded growth mindset where you're
mhm,
willing to be open to new, to unique, to different?
yeah.
And again, yeah, just making sure that we're reflecting on our own behavior and communication styles and how we can improve, because when we focus on self-improvement, everybody around us benefits as well. So
Yeah.
with that, thank you for tuning in. We're glad that you came to learn with us. Of course, please do like, subscribe, comment. We're here on YouTube as well as Spotify. We look forward to our next meeting where we continue to talk about how we can learn, grow, connect, and thrive together. Bye.
Awesome. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.